Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping in to Perennial Artisan Ales Abraxas. This is the second version of a trio I got from Tavour in my last delivery. And as with the last one, this one clocks in at 11.5% ABV, but this specific one has ancho chilies, cacao nibs, cinnamon, and vanilla. So going to be interesting to see how all these slight variations on the added ingredients make an impact on the overall beer. Yet again, it sounds like a really great recipe. I was really impressed on the first version that I tried, so I'm ready to jump in, try the second one. Perennial Artisan Ales is based in St. Louis, Missouri. So same as with last time, the label art is literally identical. This is what they consider their vanilla version. That is the new additive. It is the 2020 release. Label art looks the same. So let's get this cracked and poured right in the old stout glass. Pitch black again, super thick again. So I'm actually going to have to be pretty aggressive again here to let it have a chance to form any real meaningful head. We'll slow it down right about there. It's pretty thick. It's got a ways to work its magic. Okay. While that head is forming and settling, visually, yes, it is absolutely pitch black. Just as with last time, as soon as you start to pour this beer, the aroma is very, very pungent. This is a big stout. It's got added ingredients, and the aroma is quite pronounced. So we're going to get right up on it again. You can see it did, yet again, this really thick, creamy, foamy head that almost looks like a nitro tap could have pulled it. Let's get over it for a proper sniff. Yep. I mean, there's not really any discernible difference in this one. In fact, I know the vanilla is the anchor on this specific kind of twist. I only get a subtle amount of vanilla, but dominant, it's that roasty malt. You can smell the chilies, you can smell the cacao, and the cinnamon comes through very, very clearly. So without further ado, we're just going to jump right in. I expect this is going to be great. Oh yeah. Okay. No disappointment here. This is just as good as the first version that I had, the standard, and absolutely incredible. There's a lot of the same experience that I'm getting in this beer that I did on the first, which makes perfect sense because it is the same beer. But this being the vanilla version, I can tell you, yes, that subtlety of vanilla on the nose, it wasn't super pronounced, but in the flavor profile, it really does come through quite nicely. And that is a great ingredient, in my opinion, to pair with this already base beer. Just the combination of ingredients it's got in it is really, really spot on, and it clearly tastes very, very quality vanilla that they used in this. So just as with the last time, there's a very deep sense of roasty malts. It's very, very roasty. It's pitch black, it's 11.5%, it's got deep, rich roast malts, and they come right out at you. The cacao nibs that they put in here, that's really where it's binding to. It's binding to that roasty edge of the malt bill. So it's a very rich, earthy, roasty quality to it. There's no suggestion of smoke, just as with the last Abraxas. Just that nice, rich, deep, intense roast coming out of this. The ancho chilies, again, coming through very, very clearly. The cinnamon, again, coming through very, very clearly. And then that vanilla addition is also coming through very, very clearly. And for my money, it pairs extremely well with this already spectacular base beer. A little bit different. The vanilla does add a little richness to the beer, a little different direction of depth. I don't want to say that it's a more involved beer drinking process. It's just different. For my money, if I had these side by side, I would immediately be able to tell the difference in the aroma. It's subtle, but there was no vanilla suggestion on the first beer. That is present here. And there was no suggestion of vanilla on the last one, whereas it is here. So yeah, it is a different beer. It is a unique twist on how to make a different version of a beer, especially one this big and complex and intense and layered in terms of flavor and ingredients as this one already is. But they have done right by this beer. Yet again, absolutely delicious. So I'm going to jump back in. I was really picking apart the flavor aspect of this one. I'm going to talk a little more specifically on the body and the mouthfeel, and we'll talk about the finish again. But yet again, Abraxas 2 for 2. Absolutely delicious. Mouth feels very resistant. 11.5%, you would expect it very resistant. This one gets very creamy, silky, velvety smooth when you agitate around the palate. Body on this one has some heft. It doesn't feel quite as heavy, quite as weighty as I would expect. I'll have to check my notes to compare that to the last Abraxas, but this one I would say overall feels kind of on the border between medium and medium heavy. It's above average, but it's not quite as big and bold and heavy and in your face as I would expect of a beer like this, especially when you see it pouring out that thick. You're thinking, oh, that's going to be super resistant, super heavy. Resistant it is, heavy, not as heavy as you would expect. So overall, very, very nice. Second sip, these flavors intensified again. Everything I got on first sip is just coming through with a lot more clarity. And I'll say this about this, and I remember this from the first one, the balance on this is just absolutely top tier. The malt bill has a lot of layers to do what it did, and then you add the chilies in the mix, you add the cacao nibs in the mix, you add the cinnamon in the mix, and in this case vanilla as well, to let everything come through very clearly, nothing vying for attention, trying to take center stage, just all working together, all being present, having their own voice. That is a masterclass in how to balance a beer. Perennial Artisan Ales nailed it on this version as well. Finish, very, very long, just as on the last one. It's very bold, very pungent flavors here. They do linger quite long on the back of the palate on each sip, and it's a nice full finish. There's no dryness. It's not a dry stout at all. It's nice and wet. Just a fantastic beer. I'm going to take my time, sip on this one, count my scores. When we come back, we'll get this one ranked from top to bottom. All right, now that we've gotten to enjoy this beer, we're going to get it ranked. So this was Perennial Artisan Ales vanilla version of their Abraxas. 11.5% ABV on this one. Brewed with ancho chilies, cacao nibs, cinnamon, and vanilla. Perennial Artisan Ales is based in St. Louis, Missouri. So first thing before I get into the reviews, I went back and reviewed my tasting notes on the original Abraxas. And that one did too have vanilla in it. So really the defining difference between this version that they call the vanilla version and the normal is they use a lot more vanilla in it to really have the vanilla as a centerpiece of the additive ingredient flavor profile in this beer. And it was quite noticeable. So let's go down the scores. Starting with the aroma, just like on the standard version, it was absolutely huge on this. You could really smell everything quite clearly. And that added vanilla did absolutely make a difference in the aroma as well. The aroma on this one did get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the taste, I enjoyed this one equally as well as I did the first. Everything about it just as nice and layered and multifaceted as on the standard version of the beer. But again, that vanilla really did have a much larger presence in it. And it's a really great flavor to bring out in this combination of ingredients. It absolutely works in this beer. I thought it was delicious. The taste does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the body, interestingly on this one, the body on the first one, I did give a perfect 10 out of 10, but on this one, I thought that the body wasn't quite as large on this specific version. Now, this could just be luck of the draw on the beer that I got. Obviously, slightly different. They're not brewed identically, but this one, the body didn't have quite that same heft to it that I was expecting that I did get on the first one, but it was above average. Body on this one gets a 7 out of 10. For the mouthfeel on this exactly as expected. It was very thick, very resistant, very viscous. Agitating around the palate, it got ridiculously silky, creamy, smooth. Mouthfeel does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the finish, I did not rate the finish with top marks on the original version, but on this version I did. This one definitely lasted a very long time. I think really, as pungent as this beer is, the first version didn't really translate into as long a finish as I expected. But on this one, the vanilla really did go a long way to pushing to the end, and certainly the roasty edge of the malt as well. Finish does get a perfect 10 out of 10. Head and retention, same as on the standard version, just absolutely textbook, perfect pour. Real thick, creamy, stuck around the whole time, almost looked like a nitro tap. Same as with the first one we reviewed. Head and retention gets a 10 out of 10. For the appearance, pitch black, it gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance, honestly, these beers are fantastic. There's a lot happening in them, a lot of layers, a lot of flavors, and they all have their own voice. That's how to do it. The balance gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangibles subjectively, I absolutely love this beer as well as the standard version. Perfect 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, really this beer only lost a few points in body. Not that real critical. I gave it perfect 10 out of 10 as an example of style as well, which brings the total score on the vanilla version of Perennial Artisan Ales Abraxas to a 97 out of 100. So just like with the standard version of this beer, I mean, this is absolute top tier, almost a perfect beer for my money, and I absolutely loved it. That vanilla edition, having that extra amount in this, really did make it a little bit different than the first version. So it really just depends on what you like, what you're into, but definitely something for everybody out there in terms of this beer, and the fact they have all these different versions is just awesome. This one, same as with the standard version, I do highly recommend. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live, just turn on your notifications, hit that bell icon. It's right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.